It was a fierce competition as both players had excellent camps, but Landen Roupp is going to be the Giants' fifth starter to start the season. Hayden Birdsong in the bullpen. I think both of these guys are going to have a huge impact on this team in 2025.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting the show for now over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And coming up on today's show, we are going to first get into the fact that Landen Roupp has won this competition to be the Giants' fifth starter. There was some talk amongst mostly fans that, maybe Jordan Hicks goes to the bullpen and you get both Landen Roupp and Hayden Birdsong into that rotation. I never thought that was at all likely because of the fact that, they like to keep their word a little bit, I think, and they signed Jordan Hicks with the intent, with his intent that he was going to get an opportunity to be a starting pitcher. And so I don't think based on spring training ERA, for example, you're just going to give up on Jordan Hicks starting. I think you let him get that opportunity to start, and then if it doesn't go well, then you've got Hayden Birdsong sitting there currently on your roster, not even in AAA, but on your roster, ready to step in. It does appear that FanGraphs is down at the moment, which is where I'm always going to look at players' numbers, and that definitely has an effect on what I wanted to discuss, like in terms of specific projections and whatnot for Landen Roupp. But actually, I can kind of cheat. FanGraphs I have this tab open. Basically, Landen Roupp is projected for a 3.92 ERA. I don't know what projection system that is because FanGraphs is down. And so I think it's their depth charts projection, which is a mix of Steamer and Zips, which are, two projection systems featured on FanGraphs in 128 innings, 3.92 ERA. So that's about the same as the Robbie Ray projection. Oh, it looks like the page popped up. So Landen Roupp, well, some of it still seems to be broken. But anyway, this guy, he had an amazing spring. And one of the games that actually apparently sealed the deal for him to win this competition wasn't even a game that counted on the stat sheet. It was a game that he pitched at the minor league facility where he struck out the first 9 batters he faced. He struck out 12 batters in 4 innings or 3 innings. I don't know, something kind of incredible and ridiculous like that. And yeah, I just think that this guy has a very high potential, and that he once again, this is something I gripe about a lot, but he wasn't someone who was considered a top prospect at all, in the game. He wasn't a top 100 prospect. He graduated as the Giants' number 16 prospect, according to FanGraphs. But he's got one of the better curveballs around, and it's his primary pitch. He throws it more than he throws his fastball, which is a sinker, and it grades as about average in terms of as far as sinkers go. But last year, Landen Roupp, he started off kind of rough for him, but he ended up with a 3.58 ERA, a 3.42 fielding independent pitching, and this spring he had a strikeout rate of 30.4%, walk rate of just 2.2%. That's got to be just one walk because he pitched 12 innings. The whole pitching staff did an incredible job this spring of not walking guys. Robbie Ray walked his first batter of the spring as the last batter that he faced the whole spring last night in the game against the Tigers. And again, these numbers, Roupp made 4 starts in the Cactus League, and it's not even counting. I don't think it's counting his performance when he pitched in Sacramento the other night, which was really good. He had a bunch of strikeouts again. I think he gave up 1 run. And then that game on the minor league side that was so incredibly good. I know he was facing the minor league competition, but this guy's not far removed from being in minor league, camp and in the minor league world. So there is a quote in here somewhere in this article by Alex Pavlovich published yesterday about Roupp winning the 5th rotation spot. Birdsong makes bullpen, and I cannot find what it says, but no, I can't find it. I'm sorry. I had it written down somewhere, and I have too many notes. There's so much that's happened over the last few days, like since Friday, that we don't have that note pulled up. But basically, the decision was actually made after that game on the minor league side. Bob Melvin apparently told Roupp that he had won, that he was going to be in the rotation. And so, a little weird that they didn't apparently tell Birdsong this. A little odd, like why not just tell him if he's not going to get that spot? But I mean, Hayden Birdsong in his own right had a spectacular spring. Again, this is not counting. I think he may have also pitched a game on the minor league side, and also he pitched in the game in Sacramento against the River Cats, which doesn't count as a Cactus League or spring training game. I don't quite understand why they don't count that, but it's almost like better competition. I guess you're playing your own. No, it's not better competition because you're playing a minor league team as opposed to a major league team that's in spring training. But anyway, not counting this game in Sacramento where Birdsong, I think, went just a third of an inning and struggled, but it turned out he had a cracked fingernail. He said it wasn't a big deal. He said after the game that he had an issue with his right middle fingernail. He got a fake nail on it and says he should be okay. And that was courtesy of Susan Slusser. Alex Pavlovich said Hayden Birdsong is fine after his short outing last night. He had a cracked fingernail, but it's something he deals with a lot. So probably just being cautious getting him out of there. But in 12 innings in the Cactus League, again, not counting that game against the River Cats on Sunday, he struck out 42% of batters and didn't walk anybody and had a 50% ground ball rate. So both of these guys, like I said, I think by the end of the year, and if you listen to the division preview show last night, or that aired yesterday, I should say, came out yesterday morning, and if you haven't checked it out, check it out. With all the Locked On hosts for the NL West, it was a ton of fun recording. But one of my kind of final thought about the Giants was like, you guys, I was talking to the other hosts and to their audience listening. I was like, y'all don't really probably know these names right now, Hayden Birdsong, Landen Roupp, but you're gonna know. This was my bold prediction, I guess. I was like, you're gonna know who these guys are, at least one of them, like big time by the end of the year, and I truly believe that. I think that Landen Roupp, very underrated with that curveball, and Hayden Birdsong just has an explosive arsenal, and he's going to pitch out of the bullpen. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because he hasn't, as I've pointed out many times on this show, he hasn't pitched out of the bullpen in a long time, since 2023, in which he made 25 starts and pitched out of the bullpen 3 times. And then in 2022, it was exclusively out of the bullpen in 11 2/3 innings in his first pro season. So he's basically been a starter his whole career. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like with him pitching out of the bullpen, because the stuff is so good, you don't really want him in a mop-up role. So how exactly does that play out? And as soon as somebody falters or gets injured, I would not be surprised at all to see Birdsong would be that guy who would be next in line. And the I think it was Alex Pavlovich wrote that they want him to continue to be stretched out. Like they're not going to be using him for like 1 inning appearances. He'll probably come in if a starter has a rough go of it, and pitch, 5 innings in relief. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But definitely both deserving of making this team, and they both do. And it was hard to fit them both into the rotation unless you made a big move like Hicks to the bullpen, which I understand why people bring that up, but that's ultimately not what they're going to do at the start. But by the end, I wouldn't be surprised if both of these guys are in the rotation. And there's guys behind them like Kyle Harrison. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, the bullpen, besides Birdsong, has come into view. A lot of roster moves have been made, and the Giants appear set on their pitching staff. We'll get into it in just a minute, and before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Just Ingredients. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has also partnered with 2-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF-certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. I love that Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without the artificial junk, which I just won't put in my body. Whether you're recovering after a workout or need an energy boost, their grass-fed whey protein and pre-workout deliver real results. Visit justingredients.us and use code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off. And for more wellness tips, follow @just.ingredients on Instagram. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the roster moves that the Giants have made, and also an injury update that's not a good one. We'll also kind of mention one that is better, but one is not good. And just a lot to cover here as we're 2 days away from opening day, folks. 2 days. And so couldn't be more excited. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow I'm going to be chatting in the morning with Jeff Carr from Locked On Reds, who we've never done a crossover with before, but Jeff is great. His show is great, and we're going to be chatting with him, and I think that's going to air tomorrow, either tomorrow or on Thursday morning, and then something different tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly. I got to figure out the timing of it all. But anyway, that's coming up, and the Giants are going to finalize their roster, of course, and that'll be something we get into. And then we got a real game to talk about, either Thursday right after the game or Friday. Again, I'm sorry, I haven't figured out the timing just yet. So continuing on, we've learned a lot in the last, even just today, the Giants made some moves. They made a major move, and we'll get to the first one, the most significant one, I think, first, and that is that the Giants added Lou Trivino to the Major League roster, and that's not the biggest part of it. And the thing is, they added someone who wasn't on the 40-man to the 40-man, and so they had to make a corresponding 40-man move. And what did they do? Well, there was a player who was out of minor league options who seemed like, perhaps with the injury to Jerar Encarnacion, which we will get into in more detail coming up later today, but it seemed like maybe that would give David Villar a shot to just make the roster so the Giants could give him one last look and evaluate what they have here before just cutting ties. But no, they made the decision to designate for assignment David Villar. So David Villar DFA'd by the Giants today, and Lou Trivino selected to the Major League roster. So Trivino gets added to the 40-man, and he's going to make that opening day bullpen, and David Villar has been DFA'd. And so for Villar, it is the end of a long tenure in the Giants organization that, started in 2018. He was drafted in 2018 in the 11th round, and Yeah, so that's quite a while. And he's played in 109 major league games with the Giants, and he's hit okay. I mean, a 200 average definitely doesn't jump off the page as anything to write home about, but a 400 slugging to go along with a 200 average. So when he's hit for power, and there should be some demand for this guy. And so when you DFA a player, you can trade them. There's some period of time. Is it a week? I can never quite put my finger on how long it is. I think, is it 3 days? I can never remember. But the Giants have the opportunity, if there's some team that wants to because other teams can claim David VR, but if they're we really want him and we don't want to miss out, because if another team claims him as well and there's an order, I don't know, before the season starts, I think it's based on last year's records. There's an order, and so if multiple teams put in a claim, then one team only wins the claim. And it's not just random. It's based on, I think, last year's finish in the standings. And so this can spur a trade where someone wants to cut the waiver line, and we'll have to see if somebody does that and what the Giants would get back for David VR. But, David VR showed potential at times. He had a nice rookie season in 2022 after having a monster year in the minor leagues in 2022. And he went into the 2023 season as the quote-unquote incumbent at third base, and then they didn't even start him on opening day. That was a bad look right away. I never really liked that. You call him the incumbent, and then you don't trust him to start on opening day. I get it. It was Garrett Cole they were facing, but still. David VR DFA'd. So, he seemed like a good guy, and I wish him the best. I hope he finds a good home with an organization that has room for him, because he's out of options. So it's possible he clears waivers and could be outrighted back to the minor leagues with the Giants, but I would think some team probably takes a chance on him, but you never know. You never know how other organizations value your players that you've DFA'd. So anyway, so there's that. And again, all the best to him. We'll have to wait and see how it resolves with the DFA. It just takes a while to resolve. But Lou Trevino gets added to the bullpen. We find out another couple of players have been added to the bullpen. One of the most surprising moves to me, on March 23rd, so Sunday, the Giants announced that they had optioned Sean Hjelle. And to me, that stood out as a significant surprise. There was someone on Twitter who said to me that his velocity was down, but then I asked kind of for follow-up because I hadn't read that anywhere. I'm not doubting that it's true, but the report back was that it was 93 or something was the velocity for Hjelle on his sinker, which is not bad. I mean, I don't know if he is dealing with any kind of injury. I don't think so, because Bob Melvin basically said this when asked about Sean Hjelle being optioned, and Spencer Bivens, by the way, Bob Melvin announcing that Spencer Bivens will make the opening day bullpen. So to me, Bivens over Hjelle is a surprise if they're both healthy, because I think Hjelle has a longer track record at the major league level. Hjelle was better at the major league level last year. Jelly's strikeout rate this spring was much higher. Bivens is 22%, and Jelly's is 35%. Bivens has thrown more innings, so maybe Sean Hjelle is dealing with something. I don't know. But what Alex Pavlovich said was that he said it was a bit of a surprise when Sean Hjelle was optioned over the weekend. The tall right-hander quietly had become one of the longest tenured members of the pitching staff, and he had a 3.90 ERA and a 3.62 fielding independent pitching in 58 appearances last year. Pavlovich doesn't mention it, 58 appearances, but 80 plus innings. So he was a multiple inning guy too. And then he writes, but the Giants felt they ran out of spots after Birdsong became part of the bullpen mix, and Bivens, who has a similar profile, won a job. So I'm just going to interject there and say Bivens has a similar profile, but to me, Hjelle, if you compare the two, is the better player. And he's younger, and he's just been in he's not been in, I don't know, I'll have to look at when Bivens came into the organization, but that surprised me. And like I said a bunch of times on this show, that if we all tried to guess the pitching staff, nobody would be right. And I'm pretty sure that holds up. Like, to say that Bivens was going to make it, Hjelle wasn't, Birdsong would be in there, Lou Trevino would be added, like Joey Lucchesi wouldn't make it. They would just go with one lefty. And we still don't know for sure. They could add somebody else, but this is now 13 pitchers, and it's a 26-man roster with 13 pitchers, like, official now, from what we've heard from, like, Bob Melvin, and then just, like, obvious guys like Justin Verlander and Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and Jordan Hicks, Ryan Walker, Camilo Duvall, Tyler Rogers, all the obvious guys who they don't have to say that they made the team. But anyway, Pavlovich continued that Melvin said he understood that the news would sting a bit for Hjelle, but he told him that part of the decision was about keeping as many guys in the organization as the Giants could. So that has to do with Trevino. And sure enough, Pavlovich says Trevino in particular stands out. Assuming he gets the final spot, which now we know he did, the Giants will have to add him to the 40-man roster this week. And Melvin said, quote, and sometimes it comes down to results in spring. Some other guys that are here right now had better springs, but you know what? You go through so many pitchers over the course of the season. The message to Hjelle was to make sure you stay ready because it can happen quickly. So this is where I just kind of don't get it, because the spring performance, like, what are we really doing here? Are we going based off of spring ERA? We're talking about 8 innings for Sean Hjelle. Like, you just can't evaluate a player based on 8 innings. And even if you were, he had a 6.75 ERA, did Hjelle, but the fielding independent pitching was 262. And fielding independent pitching, he struck out almost 40% of batters that he faced in spring, walked only 5.6. The batting average on balls in play against him was 526. Like, that's a ridiculously high number that's not sustainable. It wouldn't last. And if you look at projections, they're better for Hjelle than they are for Bivens. And Hjelle, he was their second-round pick in 2018. So he's been in the organization since 2018. And he is 27 years old. He'll turn 28 in May. And for Bivens, he's 30 years old. Will turn 31 in June. And he had a better ERA in the spring, but the fielding independent pitching was worse. The strikeout rate, like I said, was only 22%. I'm not trying to be harsh on Bivens. I feel a little bit bad for Hjelle, who I thought had done enough to have kind of an incumbent status in that bullpen. And Bivens has 2 minor league options left, and Sean Hjelle is entering his last option year. Sean Hjelle has over a year of service time. Bivens has 77 days of service time. So, and then in terms of how long has Bivens been in the organization, it's only been since 2022. And so, just for a number of reasons, this move among all others struck me as the most surprising. But again, nothing against Spencer Bivens, who has an amazing story and all that. But I do feel bad for Sean Hjelle. I thought he deserved a little better here. So also Randy Rodriguez, Bob Melvin said, would make the opening day bullpen. So we'll look at Randy Rodriguez's kind of numbers and projections, and also get into this injury update that is very significant to a player who was figuring to play a crucial role, at least to start the season, and to get evaluated for the Giants. Jerar Encarnacion, headed for surgery. We'll talk about it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you in part by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is also super simple to use, and when I win, this is the best part for me, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, as promised, we are going to get into this difficult news with Jerar Encarnacion headed for surgery that was actually postponed. It was supposed to be yesterday. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, again, we've got 3 more shows the rest of the week, including one that will definitely be about opening day and the game itself, which is awesome. We finally get our first game of the year to talk about on this podcast. And another day will be a conversation with Jeff Carr of Locked On Reds, the team the Giants are playing to start the season, previewing the upcoming series. So look out for those in the next few days. And also, if you didn't check out the division preview show, it was so much fun to record. And I think we have some really great hosts in the NL West, and just talking with those guys was a lot of fun, and we make predictions. And so check that out if you haven't already. Anyway, Jerar Encarnacion, last time we spoke, we were hoping that this injury to his left ring finger would not be serious, but it was worrisome because he was headed for x-rays. Well, I think he got an MRI, and it showed that he had damage to the area around the knuckle. And initially, I think he said that it was like 4 to 5 weeks was what the timetable was, but the Giants didn't announce a timeline. And in fact, the Giants said on Monday, March 24th, that Jerar Encarnacion, they said he had his surgery postponed today until later this week due to travel issues. And then they said, this is the important part, additional updates will be provided following his surgery. So like a timeline. I guess I should have read this one first. From Sunday, they said Jerar Encarnacion will have surgery tomorrow in Los Angeles. So, of course, that didn't happen, but it's postponed. To repair his left hand fracture, Dr. Steve Shin will perform the surgery. A timetable for Encarnacion's return to play will be determined tomorrow following the surgery. So we have to wait until he has the surgery to get a timeline. So Encarnacion gave a timeline. I don't know what he was basing that on, but the Giants are saying they're going to have to wait till after the surgery to determine what the timeline is. And so, as I have said, this is low-key a big blow for the Giants and for Encarnacion specifically. Bob Melvin said it this. His road to get here has been long and difficult, and this was probably the best opportunity he's ever had going into this season, because he figured to get a lot of at-bats early in the season, and now he goes down, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. And even the surgery was postponed, so we don't even know exactly when the surgery is going to be. And then we'll figure it out, and then he's got to get up to speed, basically have another mini spring training type of deal, a rehab assignment, if you will. And who knows, by that point, maybe someone else has kind of claimed a spot and there's not room for him. And so it's just unfortunate for Encarnacion. He is out of options, though, so that remains something that's playing into his favor, because once he's eligible to come off the injured list, the Giants can't just send him to the minors. They have to have him in the majors. And so as soon as he's healthy, he'll either get an opportunity with the Giants or they'll, move on from him. But I still think they'll want to give him that opportunity, just like they wanted to going into the season. So at least there's that. If he had options remaining, that would kind of be worse for him. But ultimately, it's not great for the Giants because they didn't have a lot of depth in this department. And you were looking at already a somewhat weak kind of first base and DH situation with some combination of like Wilmer Flores and Lamont Wade Jr. and Jerar Encarnacion, and also just cycling other guys through the DH spot. But then you lose Encarnacion, and then you're looking at first base is like Wade and Flores in a platoon, and then who's the DH? It's probably Flores on a day when Wade is starting at first. That weakens your bench, and because now you can't use Flores as a pinch hitter for Wade, because Flores is in the lineup. Possibly Flores stays on the bench, and then it allows you to like play a Luis Matos as a DH just to get a look, just to give him opportunities. It potentially opens up opportunities for like a Casey Schmidt to be in the lineup, Brett Wisely. I don't know. So the bench is like the part of the roster that remains to be determined, because I think like just looking at roster resource on FanGraphs, their lineup projection in some order I think is generally correct. Wade, Adames, Lee, Chapman, and Lee, by the way, I talked on Friday about how everything had to go right for him to be ready for opening day, and so far it has. He was able to play on Sunday. Well, first of all, he was able to hit and play catch and run the bases and stuff on Saturday, the last day in Arizona, and then on Sunday he played in Sacramento against the River Cats, and then on Monday, last night, he played in the game against the Tigers. And so he's supposed to play again today and then hopefully be ready to go on opening day. So that's good news. At least there's one good injury update out of the two. But anyway, Wade, Adames, Lee, Chapman, Ramos, Bailey, Flores, Yastrzemski, Fitzgerald. I think in some order that's going to be your lineup on opening day. So that's 9 guys, of course. And then we've learned that Sam Huff is going to be the backup catcher. Now, Huff was claimed off waivers from the Texas Rangers, was a former top Rangers prospect, number 8 in their organization as a 2022 graduate. Lots of power, has hit well in his brief major league career. 258 average, 313 on base, 455 slugging. And Max Stassi, kind of, I guess the plan has been all along like that Stassi would go to Sacramento, and he's okay with that. And I think he's from the Sacramento area, and he needs time to work himself back up from a surgery that I think he had in the offseason. And so Stassi was not on the 40-man. Huff was as a waiver claim. And so it kind of makes sense to this, again, like what Melvin said, but he was referencing pitchers, but like trying to keep as many players in the organization as they can. So keeping Huff on the roster, not having to DFA him to like add Stassi, it makes sense. Now you get to keep them both. So Huff makes it. So that's 10. And then those remaining 3 spots are the ones that are not certain. I do think Luis Matos is a near lock. So that would be 11. But then we're talking 2 more spots, and guys who are still in the running for, I mean, let's just pretend that Matos isn't a lock. You've got Casey Schmidt, Brett Wisely, Luis Matos, Grant McCray. These are all guys who, McCray has not been optioned. He's on the 40-man, so he's still in the running, it would seem. And then Christian Koss is also someone who's still up with the major league team. And like, I think that he's impressed a lot in spring, especially defensively, and he's hit well, and he hit well in the minor leagues with the Giants last year. So Christian Koss is kind of a dark horse candidate to possibly make the roster, but perhaps Casey Schmidt is a similar profile and ahead of him. Koss is kind of an infielder who can move around the diamond. Schmidt, Susan Slusser reported that the Giants have received a lot of trade interest in Schmidt this offseason, but I don't think they want to trade him. I get why teams are reaching out, because Schmidt's blocked at third base by Chapman and blocked at shortstop by Adames, and Fitzgerald's ahead of him at second base. So what do you do with Schmidt? Well, maybe he's just a super utility guy in your infield, and maybe he makes the team, and I don't know. We don't know. And so those last couple of spots are to be determined on the position player side, but everything else looking settled. as we get ready for the opener. So that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast with hosts Dominic Martino and Matthew Ane. MLB fantasy draft season is here. Be the most informed fan and set yourself up for a league win. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a ton. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.